All right, hey guys. Thanks for being here for the EE composition lesson with Ted Nash. I'm the video producer here at Jazz at Lincoln Center. My name's Adam Meeks, and I'll be your tech host for the afternoon. When it comes time to it, and for it in a little while, I will pop back in to give instructions on how to navigate this Q&A portion of the afternoon. And until then, I will kick things off to Jazz at Lincoln Center's Antoinette Henry to get started. Hey, Antoinette.
Whoa. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Jazz at Lincoln Center's virtual House of Swing. My name, again, is Antoinette Henry, and I am the manager of secondary and higher education programs for Jazz at Lincoln Center. Our composition and arranging masterclass will begin in a few moments, but first, I would like to thank you all for joining us and say just how thrilled I am that we were able to add this component to our virtual festival. The Dr. J. Douglas White Student Composition and Arranging Contest is a key component of the Essentially Ellington program. It is a unique educational experience where young composers and arrangers receive valuable professional feedback from Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra member and Grammy Award winner, Mr. Ted Nash. Mr. Nash not only scores and provides qualitative and quantitative feedback for all applications, but he also conducts a 2-hour composition and arranging lesson with the contest winner. This is all made possible by the generous support of Dr. J. Douglas White. We are incredibly grateful to you for helping us inspire and support the next generation of jazz composers and arrangers. Now, I would like to congratulate and introduce to you this year's winner of the Dr. J. Douglas White Composition and Arranging Contest, Mr. Leo Steinriede from Lower Merion, PA. I'm sorry, Leo. Leo's winning composition, The Rhetorical Situation, is a mature arrangement that successfully brings together both past and present influences, incorporating call and response, melodic development, and harmonic implication. So, without further ado, we present to you the world premiere of The Rhetorical Situation. So please, let's all give Leo a virtual round of applause. Again, congratulations, Leo, on your winning composition. And Ted, or in this case, Mr. Nash, please take it away.
Thanks. Thank you, Antoinette. Leo, congratulations, man. Kill him.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a very first time we've ever done anything like this, and I'm really excited about this. I mean, you and I have spent some time talking a little bit privately about the chart, but to use this as an example for this competition and in general for arranging, I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited about using your piece. There's so many elements in it that I think are things we can all look at and learn from. And originally I gave you a little bit of notes when you submitted to the competition, and I've taken some more notes, which I'll share. No, it was great. I listened to it again fresh, so I wanted to jot down a few things, and I looked at the score a little more carefully. Before we get started, I do want to just shout out to Henry Zuccarello. I think that's his name. He was the runner. He was such a beautiful piece of music. I just wanted to, send some congratulations his way for being the runner-up. He might be on the workshop with us today. So again, I'm very impressed with your piece of music, and I know that you mentioned to me the other day that you worked a little with Joe Block just as a mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was a winner 4 years ago or something. What I really like about this, and I'm not sure if, and you can jump in here anytime and tell me or correct me or just respond with me here. There's a lot of clarity in your piece of music, and I think we talked about clarity, and he talked about that, right? What did he say about clarity? I'm just kind of curious.
Clarity that's been like at the forefront of my mind since I started kind of working on arranging and composing stuff. Just what are the different things that are happening, and how can I make each of them stand out? So one of the pieces, like Blood Count by Duke Ellington, was a piece that Joe showed me, where there's like the whole band is playing and then Johnny Hodge is kind of playing over top, and it's like there are two things happening and they're each very clear. So when I was working on this piece, I was trying to, clarity was probably the biggest thing that I looked at, and just in terms of making things fit together really nicely and cleanly.
Yeah, and clarity comes out of choice, right? Comes out of the choices that you make. I think one thing that we have to remember is that when it comes to arranging and composing, there are no right or wrong choices. It's really about, is this the choice? Is this representing what you're hearing or feeling, thinking about? And so we could say, well, maybe something's too busy, or it's not clear, or things like that, but it's not that it's bad or it's good or whatever. So it's all about choices. And a lot of the choices that we make come from what we want to accomplish, what our goals are in the piece of music. So I think sometimes it's important for us to start by saying, what do I want to accomplish with this piece of music? And Antoinette gave us this nice little description of your piece, sort of the meeting of past and present. I feel like there's a lot of respect for the tradition of music in this piece. You're not trying to get too ahead of yourself. And that's also important because of where you are. And the fact that anything that you do, whether you're playing, talking, writing, engaging, is representing who you are and where you are. And how old are you, 17?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you're now at this point where we all need to be, when we're younger especially, is to really absorb all this music that has come, all music that is, and as it, listen, absorb and make it part of who we are. It's like we do when we play. We imitate, we emulate other players, and we don't worry about our style. We don't worry about what's my sound, man. People are like, write me and they're like, hey man, how do I develop my sound? And you don't just say, I'm gonna set out to develop my own style. Like Miles Davis didn't say, man, I gotta figure out my style. You know, he said, this is who I am. And his style just naturally out of all the music that he played and listened to, who he played with. And that's what's happening with this chart. I feel like there's a lot coming out of what you've listened to and who you are. And that's what I love about this. And the clarity that you're talking about is really awesome. I'm going to open up the score. Now, again, since this is the first time we've really done this kind of thing, and I'm kind of new to the technology of sharing screens and all that, and although they've helped me learn this a little bit, this process. There's going to be maybe times where I'm a little slower doing this, but so everybody just be patient with me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this score, and there is you actually came back and rewrote based on some of my notes, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, make some changes.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to share your new score. I'm going to share the score, which, let's see. Do y'all see it?
I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, good. All right. So this is the original score, and that's the one that matches the audio. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about your piece from the top. Talk about it. I'm going to play a little bit. Let me cue up, sorry about that. Let me just cue up your piece. Everyone can hear that, right? Leo, you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Awesome. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to just play from the beginning, and I'm going to stop and start a little bit. And we're going to break things down a little bit. First of all, when I look at it, is that it's in concert, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's important to develop kind of the skill to write in a transpose score, and we talked about that, Leo. It doesn't really make a big difference. It seems easier to work with a concert score because when you're going to the piano and doing voices and looking at stuff, it's faster because you're looking at concert and guitar or keyboard to play voicing. But one thing I don't like about the concert score that I prefer the transpose score is because you see the instruments in their registers, right? And it kind of gives you an idea of what they are in the register and what vibe that's going to play and what kind of tension that's going to bring out, because an alto sax in an upper register is going to have a kind of a stronger vibe than the same note played by trumpet that would be in a lower register. It's not going to be in a register that really speaks a lot. So if you're just kind of analyzing everything up and down in concert, sometimes you don't get the feeling of what that player is actually dealing with, like where is it in their range, and it might give you a little better indication of what that might feel like for the player. And I think that's kind of important, is to sort of identify with the experience that the musician is going to have when they're actually playing the music. Someone told me that when I first started writing, they said, the first thing you do is just write in transposed score. And this is in the day before we had Finale and Sibelius and stuff. So we went right to paper. There was no push a button, right? It'd be kind of nice if people could start with pencil scores, just because there's something about the feeling of it and writing out each note, and it gives you sort of this instant feeling about the music that I think that we don't get as much in the digital sense, but that's all right. So anyway, I know that based on my notes, you changed the beginning, but let's just deal with this how it is. I love how you just jump right in there. Ba, 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 da, ba, 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 da, ba, 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 da, right? No apologies. We're getting right to something. And you're also setting up something like an intro was always about maybe hinting at or giving a foreshadowing about something that's going to happen later in the music. And so we always use the intro to kind of vibration. We're in a swing feel for the most part. We're 3 for the most part, and that's kind of what we deal with here. So you're kind of setting it up for us, and you're starting with excitement, and the melody comes in. Boom! We have this contrast, and by clarity, and this contrast is really clear. And I love when we can find different ways to contrast throughout a piece of music that helps the music to flow in a certain way. Sometimes if we jump around too much, in this case, the flow continues. Now, one thing I noticed about the beginning here, it's a 7-bar phrase. It's a 3-bar phrase and a 4-bar phrase, right?
Yeah.
Was that just sort of, that came naturally, or did you think about that?
No, it totally came naturally. I came up with the first 3 bars, and then I said kind of that 4th bar is the arrival, and then that section ended up kind of being 4 bars. When we put it together, it's 7.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It doesn't even feel like, oh wow, there's something strange about this. It feels very natural, which means that you were trusting your sort of intuition about writing it, going with the natural flow, and I think that's successful. What I like about it, it says, okay, 3 and then a 4. So there's a 3-bar phrase and a 4-bar phrase, which is sort of, without you even intending to do that, a foreshadowing the fact that you have mostly in 3/4, and then you have some 4/4 bars. So it's sort of like saying, hey, like and stuff like that, right? It's sort of, it's subliminal almost.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, well.
Right. Oh, I know you didn't. I didn't think you did. So the melody, well, I'll play that little piece just from the beginning, and you can hear what I'm talking about. Okay, right? So now we parent way down, and we get to that kind of small band feel, right? That's what you're kind of intending there, to sort of say, okay, yeah, it's a big band, but we're going to still embrace the small band within the big band, which is always a nice device to use. The melody has a nice space, and you fill it very nice. Do you see my cursor when I do this?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got this nice flowing melody. It's very easy and very relaxed. It sets up the vibe for the piece. And then the trombones are kind of like the antithesis. They're like the agitation. So you've got this nice relaxed thing, and then you've got the contrast of these percussive hits. So that is this is a nice way to have a kind of a call and response, in that everything is so nice. No, it isn't. You know what I mean? Like that kind of vibe. It's like a conversation. So you're setting up the idea of a conversation, a back and forth, which is always very, very successful. So you got the saxophones all in unison here. And then right in here, they break out into harmony right away. So I thought that was nice, because what you're doing is you're developing. And I think we always have to keep in mind development. So whatever we can do to continue to develop a piece is usually going to be successful in terms of building or flowing. And so I think in this case, you've done that. You've come to it pretty quickly. So, and we talked a little bit about taking your time to develop things, but in this case, you didn't have a whole lot of time. So you developed it right away. And I noticed that, let's see, we got the G in the third bar here. I was kind of playing through the voicing. So you got right? That's the first one in the third bar of that. And then you go to that one, right?
Yeah.
And I know you probably didn't like that one as much.
The second one?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm saying that because you've doubled the G's, right? And
it's like a closed, yeah.
Yeah, they're both, this whole thing is a closed voicing, closed system, right? Closed voicings, which gives you that tight feeling rather than spreading out. I mean, you know, you could, when you spread out things, whatever, you have like opened up voicings. A closed voicing is when you're all when everybody's within an octave. So you're trying to maintain that. And it was sort of interesting because I looked at it as sort of a problem solving. So how do you get the baritone to move with everybody else and then not have to double that G, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of tough because for me, you could have had a little bit, I mean, it's such a rich passage, but you could have had a little bit more richness had there not been a doubled note just for that moment. It's not a big deal. Again, it's not wrong or right. It's just like, how do we deal with that? So I thought you could drop, I mean, you could have dropped, let's see, the first one is da, 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 da. You could have dropped possibly like something, and then then had the baritone on the low D rather than the second alto. And then when the baritone moves up to the F, the movement is still consistent with the rest of the section, although you're breaking out of the closed voicing. So again, it's always interesting how we're constantly problem solving when we're writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here's your melody, and now you're trying to do something. Now, how do you do it? You get to this one situation, it's like, it's not exactly what I want. I mean, this may have been exactly what you want, but I'm just trying to anticipate the kind of things that you go through and think through, thinking of while you're working on this. Because I know for myself, I get to these situations all the time where it's like problem solving. How am I going to do this? How am I going to not double this note so I can have more richness? What were you thinking there? I'm just curious. Was that anything you were thinking?
In terms of the voicing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the G. Yeah.
So like closed position voicings, that was like the first thing I started working on with sax solis was the tenor, or the bari is an octave below the alto. So that's something that that's like a technique that I'm really comfortable using. And like just more recently, I've been working with drop 2 and drop 3 and how they're different. They're really different sounds. So I think a lot of the things in this piece, and we talked about this in our lesson, are things that I did because I was comfortable with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the problem solving, I think there's a lot of spaces where I problem solved, but I think if I was talking about this with another teacher of mine, if I were to redraft this piece, it would look different. Right. And so I think like what I might have done is I could have gone F, I could have gone down to E in the bari. I don't know if I would have liked that as much. But there's, in terms of the closed position voicings, I did that because that's what I know. I know like the G on the top and the bottom is going to sound strong, but it might not necessarily be the best for this situation, especially because not all of the other voicings are like that.
Right. That's the only reason why I would say that, because it suddenly introduces something that's less rich than all the other voicings around it. Super sax. If you listen to the super sax group, they took all of Bird solos and orchestrated it out for the sax section. The bari and the alto always doubled. So it was always within an octave, and it made it really powerful because the baritone is supporting the lead alto, and that's a great sound. I like the richness that you get when you open up the section and you have 5 completely different voices. But anyway, again, there's nothing wrong with this. It was just something that I noticed and I wanted to point out. And just after this and before letter C, whereas before you had down here, you had bop, bop, you had the trombones answering. When you did it the second time, do, dee, 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 da. Now we're just kind of hanging there. And there's not a, let me see if you got this. I'm moving this over because I can't see it underneath the stuff on the right, but right, you have this little like counter line that comes in, which is very, very cool. And then here, nothing's happening. And you have a little movement here. But I almost thought it'd be kind of nice if you had that same counter line repeated, but maybe in another octave, like by the trombones. We're not doing anything, whatever it is. Like to say, okay, I hear you, like this kind of storytelling thing again about how we pass things along. The space is actually okay. But no one's really dealing with the space. Like if you want just space, maybe the rhythm section has to be more active, or you could write something for bass and guitar, but right here, it just feels like it just sits for a minute. And I'll play that so everyone can just hear what I'm talking about. It's nothing wrong with it. Again, it's just something that you say, okay, is this what I want? Again, had it flow a little bit more, but again, it's not wrong. It's just something I noticed, and I thought it might have been interesting to kind of think about that. It's good sometimes to put in places where the music breathes a little bit. I think what is very mature about this piece is that you don't overwrite. A lot of people, especially when they're younger, tend to overwrite and put everything they know into every measure. And then it's just like, you have to trust that people will listen and absorb and understand and relate to a particular little piece of music and not have to be told constantly about what they have to listen to. So it's like saying, you know, allowing people to register something and think about it before you move on. It's like that when we play solos. We don't want to always constantly be playing. We need to allow people to sort of understand what we just played and absorb the idea before we move on and we take them on a journey.
Yeah. I've written a couple charts, like just drafts of things where I, you know, I've messed with it so much. Every measure is in a different time signature. The harmony makes no sense. It's like, okay, well, this is not, you know, this isn't really cohesive. And so this piece actually went through a number of iterations, and like the first lead sheet that I wrote back in like October of 2019 was going to have a metric modulation. It was going to go into different keys, and it was like way too much. I ended up scrapping that, and I just looked back at that lead sheet, and there's only like those first 4 bars, and then like the little intro section, that ascending minor chords. That's it.
Yeah.
And so I ended up like having to just throw out everything else. But from there, I was able to develop a lot more material. That's like most of what's in the chart was not in my first draft at all.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, it's a very singable melody. I love your chord structure on this too. So we get to the bridge here at letter C, and we have a very similar instrument choice. We have the alto kind of leading the way, and the trombones playing a percussive figure again. And I feel like, it's okay. It sounds good. It could have been an opportunity to kind of switch things up a little bit. Maybe the trombones and that register playing in unison. I mean, there might have been a lot of tension, so maybe that's too much. But just the idea of like thinking of different ways that we can develop this piece of music. We get to the bridge. I mean, a bridge is kind of designed to be a departure from the A sections, right? The whole idea of a bridge is to go somewhere else. So if we stay in the same vein, it just, you know, we maybe missed a small opportunity to develop something or make something a little different. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally see that, and not to get too ahead of myself, but the part right after that is like, that's like the big brass entrance. I can only think like, well, the trombones in that next section still have an accompanying figure, so it might have been good to give the trombones like a melodic figure. So for contrast, because it's still more of the same thing, and that's something that I realized when we went to record this chart, was that trombone players showed up first. And so I handed out the parts, and the trombone players are playing. It's like, they were only playing the accompaniment parts. They're always playing these backup things. So now, now writing for the trombones and giving the trombones kind of parts where they're the primary, you know, point of focus is something that I'm incorporating more into my writing. But
yeah. And again, you know, everything I say, there's nothing really wrong with that. It all works. It's like it's effective. The trombones could have also they could have been playing held out notes that would have moved with the melody, or maybe move in little different places but be held out as a contrast to the percussive kind of quality of it. There's just always so many choices to make, and it's great to try to think about all these different things. Again, always try to remind yourself, what is the objective of this particular section? What am I doing? What do I want the piece to do or say? And then you find the ways to express that. But I do love how you develop all the way through here, especially as you build up in this area here. It's just gorgeous, and how you get us into the solo section. So I'm going to play from the bridge area, and let's just listen to how it unfolds. I think you take a nice bit of time for this to unfold. And as we get into this area here, first of all, you got you've got this very interesting situation here. All right, we're building up here. I have to see this. Okay, right in here, we've got the trumpets and now check out here. So basically, you're setting up this upward line, and then it's met by a line that's coming down, and I think that's really clever. Right? Even though it doesn't really sound as much like that because they're a little different, that gives it this really nice arc. And so when I play this again, we'll listen for that. And then you come in here. And one thing I did notice, and I wrote this down too, let's see. This, you have like a little call and response going here between the saxophones. Right? This is a very, very obvious and really good use of call and response. It's interesting that the altos and tenors, again, now you're looking at concerts, so you just see middle register kind of, you know, but the tenors are up on a high D, right? Altos on high A. These are notes that have a lot of presence and a lot of sound to them. Trumpets in this register don't have a lot of sound. So again, if you were trying to balance that by having the trumpets have a little bit of strength to fight, like to sort of have a little battle with the saxophones, it doesn't as much in this register. If you didn't want that, and you were successful, do you know what I mean? If you actually wanted it to feel like a smaller thing, then that worked. So again, you have to understand about registers and ranges and how that affects the music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's not, I just don't know what you're intending to do, but if you're intending to match that, to match these, it doesn't quite. That's all, in intensity.
Right. That's something I realized when I was recording. Is I had like this little Zoom recorder, and I put it right in front of the band, and since it's a call and response, the saxophones are playing behind when the trumpets are playing, and so I was hearing, like, I'm in front of the band, and it's obviously super loud coming at me, but then the recording device, when I listened back to it in between takes, it was like, well, the saxophones really got to come down so we can hear the trumpets cut through because of that register.
Yeah, it's interesting. And each time we write something, it's a learning experience, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, every time I listen to something, I'm like, maybe that's not quite how I expected it to be. And how come I'm not hearing the trumpet in the lower register or whatever? And it's amazing how you can choose, say, the trumpets, if they're like in here, B flats and G's and all that, and you put that on trombone, now they're up on their high B flats and G's. They have so much power. So again, it's like choices about what it is you want to accomplish, and then you choose the instruments. But this still works fine. And then all the way through here, now it gets really full. Now you bring back this information from the intro. So that's good. We always want to repeat certain themes and material that comes through. Now you have this big chord at the end here, and I was kind of checking out the voicing of this. Did that sound as full as you wanted it to?
I think, well, first of all, let me preface this. When I had this played by a band, it was the first time I was having one of my charts played by a band, and the sound was just coming like directly at me. So when you had like, I don't know, like 12 horn players playing super loud in your face, it was really kind of crazy. But let me look at this voicing.
We've got the trumpet way up high, right?
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of space between the bari and the trombone 3.
Yeah, the bones they start a fourth pattern, and then you get to the first trumpet, and then you're starting like all fifths, correct? There, yeah.
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 Small.
I was thinking that, again, I was looking at your score, and I was thinking that was transposed, but it's not, it's in concert. And I was thinking, boy, it's interesting how, but one thing I do notice is that the saxophones, you got the brass spread out, playing this full thing, and then you're trying to fill in some of the important notes with the saxophones in the middle register, correct?
Yeah.
You have like, so you have the sharp 11. That's the only place we really hear the sharp 11. It's in kind of a lower register of saxophone, well, you know, just mid-register saxophone, but versus all that brass. So the saxophones aren't going to give you aren't going to fill in as much. They're not as powerful as a big, strong brass chord. So we kind of want the saxophones to sound good on their own. I mean, they could have been, you know, they could have had like a more of a solid chord and picked up parts of the brass chord. I just feel like the brass should sound good on its own. The saxophones should sound good on their own. And when you put them together, it's really powerful. If we're trying to fill in little spaces with the saxophones, with the brass spread out, sometimes it's not as effective as it could be. It won't be as full sounding, you know?
Yeah. And I think if I were to rewrite this voicing, I'd probably start with like a major seventh in the bottom. I would go like D flat to C in like trombone 3, and then kind of build up from there. But I think the way that this could be stronger is just having like one lowered note at the bottom, because it's a lot. It kind of feels like I'm trying to smush all these notes in the span of like 2 octaves or so.
Yeah, yeah.
And it could be a lot bigger.
Yeah, but I mean, it still has excitement and the sound. I mean, it's not wrong. It's just, is it exactly what you wanted? I think it sounds really good. I'm going to play from where we were. And the 2 bars that you have the whole band playing in unison, I love that choice, because it's sort of like we have a lot of harmonic density in different spots and some counter lines, and all of a sudden everybody's like, we're together. And I love that. And 2 bars, very exciting. And then back to harmony again to send off into the solo. I'm not sure the solo really needs to kind of have a 4-bar fill in here, right?
That's something I chopped later on.
Yeah, you don't hear it on the recording, so could have given the fourth trumpet a note too, but it's better to let their chops get ready for the solo. So I'm going to let it play from here, and I'll just talk over it. Whoops.
And that's Marcel Bellinger on the trumpet, one of my teachers.
Yeah. Oh, he sounds great. They both solos sound excellent. Those backgrounds are excellent. It recalls material from before, and that's always an effective thing to do when we're writing for backgrounds. But also what it does is it helps the rhythm section engage, and it gives the soloist something to play against. So all of this material here, it's a real nice way to build up, give the soloist something, give the rhythm section, and then I love this little come down right here. It's like, wow, we're building it up, but wait a minute, no, it's like a false promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Aidan McKeon on the saxophone. It's my my good friend.
Yeah, he sounds awesome. I really like his style. And one more thing about this chord, I was noticing too about the big send-off chord, is that you could have brought these trombones, like the trombones are here. It's like the perfect choice for a voicing, just in general. You've got the third, and then you've got upper extension starting, kind of. But I mean, also they could have been up a fourth, and you could have had maybe some of the saxophones down low too as well. And it would have been more powerful too, because the trombones, when you get them up a little bit higher, they have a little bit more meat. But even so, that's not a big deal. So yeah, so the backgrounds behind the tenor, it also recalls that bone call and response. And it's always good for us to try to use material that we've established earlier in the chart for anything, for backgrounds or for whatever. I like the muted brass you have for just a moment, right?
During the during the backgrounds of
the tenor backgrounds, just because it creates a sound that is different from the solo. I think we always want to make sure that it's like we don't want to have strong saxophone backgrounds behind a saxophone solo or whatever, because the timbre is so similar. But here you've made a real specific choice to have a different timbre, one that's not going to also get in the way of the tenor solo. So that's a really good choice. And then they open up in order to get us out, and then we come down. Now we come, let's see, H. Yeah, and these figures they're not forced in any kind of way. They're very natural. It's the kind of thing where you just feel, you're not trying to impose some kind of crazy rhythm on top of this. It's something that felt very supportive of the whole vibe of the piece. Now, I love this development here. Again, you're calling on some of the things that happen in the thematic material earlier on, like with some fourths and things, and a little bit of these intervals that kind of pop in and out. It's a very effective development. I mean, I think that in some way the call and response here is very on the nose. It's like very even and very obvious, but it's okay. It's sometimes the things that are the most obvious are the things that work, right?
Right. The way this section kind of came about was actually the first. I wrote just these saxophones, and I spent like 6 hours just getting the voice leading I wanted and getting it all right. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to add some kind of melody over this. So then I wrote the trumpets, and then went back and I wrote the saxophones, because every time the trumpets played like a held note, it's like, well, I can fill in with the saxophones here. And I kind of went back and forth between writing the saxophones and then the trumpets, and then saxophones and the trumpets. Yeah. So it came about very, very naturally. And I've tried to write kind of call and response at the same time, and it generally ends up being too forced and rigid, and like they're sometimes trying to get over one another. But this first, it was just the saxophones and then the trumpets, and then I filled in the saxophones after.
Yeah, I really like it, and it keeps your interest without being, again, like I'm trying to do this to be interesting. It's a nice natural flow back and forth, and we can listen. I think this whole section just feels very natural to me. You do have like some 4/4 bars and 3/4 bars and back and forth. And what was the purpose of that? Like, how did you come up with 4/4 bars in the middle of it?
Well, this is something I usually do when I'm writing. Is I sing a lot. Like when I'm writing, I'll be like, singing the rhythms and clapping everything. And so, so then I was like, that's the same rhythm like before. And then I was, the way that I kind of pictured it was I needed something that was kind of like that was going to shake everything up, because it's so much of the piece has been everybody's playing, or there's a lot of different things happening, but in this one moment there's just one thing, and it's bap 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 buddha. And so I felt like I was like, okay, well, I need three. There's gonna be three bap bap bap, and then there's one note that's gonna lead into it, and it just happened to be 4/4. Like earlier in the piece it was 5/4 for the solo break, not because I tried it in 3, tried it in 4, it didn't quite feel right, but 5/4 was kind of how I was feeling when I was singing it in my head. So that's kind of how the 4/4 bar came about. It was mix of singing and clapping. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And the 5/4 bar earlier, where the drums fill. At first, when I listened to it without really looking at it, I was like, okay. I didn't even notice that it was a 5/4 bar until I looked at it, and that's a good thing because that means that it felt natural.
And that's the goal. That sometimes I would be afraid to like put in like a bar, because I was like, well, maybe this is going to throw everybody off. But it ended up, when I would listen back to it, and it was in 3, or it was in 4, or not in 4. If it was just in 3, like the whole piece is in 3. Some sections I just find I needed to mess with it a little bit just to get it to come out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
So if that means adding an extra beat or an extra bar here or there, it's, so be it.
It's interesting because 3/4, especially kind of a bright 3/4, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of room for stuff. It goes by so fast. And the material kind of has to fit in. And sometimes you just have some material that doesn't quite fit in that 3/4. Is that a problem? No, it doesn't really matter. I mean, there's some people who just, every bar is almost completely different in terms of the meter. I did a recording with a classical composer named John Adams. Have you heard of him?
I have heard of him.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I did a recording with him 30 years ago called Nixon in China. It was an opera that he wrote. It is an opera. He won the Grammy Award that year for Best Opera. I remember that. But the piece was so difficult. I love the music, but it has 1,800 time signature changes.
Right. Yeah. That's the one that I've heard is Nixon in China.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a sax quartet on there, and I'm playing alto, and I just love his music. I think he's got a combination of sort of new age serial, and then also some really beautiful harmony and melodies that sing, and it's just really a great combination. You should check him. People who are listening should go check out John Adams' music. But and also John Adams was speaking at Juilliard, I think, a couple of years ago, and when someone asked him who he thought the most important composer, American composer was, he said Duke Ellington. So I love him for that.
Yeah.
I mean, just for a classical composer to recognize that is really awesome. Anyway, so I noticed in the chord structure, you have these dominant chords that really kind of feel like a whole tone, right? And the soloist, I even noticed the tenor player kind of played whole tone lines, right?
Yeah. Well, that's
real specific.
That comes out of just that progression of D minor 7 or F major 7 to D flat 7, like sharp 4, sharp 5 is like, for me, that's part of the essential sound of Monk. And Monk is, like, I talked about this with you before, how Monk is one of my biggest influences. And so when I hear dominant chords, like often when I hear dominant chords, I hear whole tone sounds. Just because I listen to a lot of Monk, but yeah, that definitely was a very specific choice for the chords.
Yeah, I like it. And then of course you do refer to that later, and I'll show some of that when we listen to it. But sometimes the dominant chord, right? I mean, when we play A Train, we have that option always to play on that dominant chord, the whole tone scale. We could play other scales or approach it differently, but when you listen to like Joe Henderson playing that, he always plays a whole tone scale. And it's a funny scale because it sounds goofy sometimes. It's a perfect scale, but it's also got this goofiness about it, which I really like. It's got a lot of character.
And every time I play whole tone on like a chord, I just feel like it just doesn't come out the way I want it to. or I was doing a sax soli. I was doing a sax soli on on like Bright Mississippi, like I had shown you in our lesson, and I'd harmonized the whole thing in whole tone, and it just totally didn't work because it was just way too much of this kind of mess of whole steps, you know. So yeah, it's a weird sound, but I just wanted to say about the other dominant chords a little bit earlier in the chart where there's or actually it was on the screen. There's the whole tone sound, but it's also kind of the diminished sound, which is the C13 flat 9 sharp 11. Mm-hmm. So kind of that section is there's C diminished, and then it kind of goes up to D flat diminished to
right.
And so when this is when like Barry Harris talks about there's the whole tone and then there's the diminished, and they're the two related scales that are unrelated, you know. That's kind of something I realized after the fact, but that there's this beginning section where it's whole tone and then it's diminished afterwards. So that's just kind of something I noticed about the dominant chords in this piece later on.
It's great because every time we write, it's a new we learn something new about harmony and about movement and chords and the implication of going from one chord to another. And you're picking that up from Monk's music, which is amazing. There's so much implication in his music, and it sometimes sounds a little disjunct or kind of awkward the way he does stuff, but it's so rich, and it's the movement of the chords is so powerful. There's so much to learn from that, and I like how you're dealing with that in this piece. I'm going to play it from after the solo, and we're going to we'll listen to this development here, and go from there. So you have the whole tone, so you're dealing with, like, now you're saying, I'm really going to embrace this thing. It's got that kind of mock thing, and the rhythm's a little off, and I love that because it's saying, I really love the style, like the monk kind of thing. And you got the chords in the brass supporting the saxophones playing this whole tone line. Now, then we go ba 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 ba. Now we bring back this thematic material again, and it helps everything get solidified again. Mm-hmm. That's always such an important device, is to bring back material that we've used to talk. Here it feels almost like, okay, I got to force this in here. I got to bring this back so that I can get to something. Whereas you could have taken a little more time to develop all of this, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and we talked about that too. Love it. And then you get up to this big brass chord with the saxophones answering. I'll keep playing from here. Pretty much exactly like I love that. I love the fact that trumpet goes up to the high note just by itself, you know.
Yeah, that was something that's something I added when I found out who the lead trumpet player would be. I was can you play this note, and then
F sharp, yeah. And you have a 2/4 bar in there. Again, that's just to allow some space before you start this figure. It feels like a good choice, a natural choice. Mm. I was thinking about the last chord. I'll move this over a little bit to see it. It's kind of like a C or an E sharp 5, basically. I mean, it could be either. You've got it over the E. Basically that kind of sound, like an E sharp 5 or something, right?
Yeah, that came from a guitar player. So I played like a C augmented with the open strings, and I just love that kind of ring with the E on the bottom and the E on the top. So yeah. And then you move that up, it's D flat 7 sharp 5 sharp 9 over E. So that's kind of the whole basis of this piece, is just those two chords moving back and forth.
Right, and it's great. And a lot of times we call a chord something because of what the bass is playing, or what's the lowest note, the bass note, or whatever. But it's just could be so many different things. But it's a rich chord. It's a great way to end this piece with the kind of tension instead of, because you know, da, dee, da, it's so nice, and then you go bop, bop, bop. So you always have this tension that's playing in there, and you decide to end with the tension, which I think is a really good choice, and to leave it exciting. I was noticing that the sax voicing, I asked, it's hard to read. Is it, what is it?
Yeah, it's so concert E, concert G sharp, and that would be
E again.
E, yeah, and then C, and then E.
Right.
Ledge
So
line tough.
you've actually got 3 E's in that chord.
Yeah.
And I feel like, no, wait, that's a, in the baritone, it's a, oh, it's a C.
No. The baritone. Wait, is the baritone in bass clef, right?
Oh, bass clef, right? That's why. So again, it's like bass clef. Baritone never even looks at bass clef. But
yeah,
it's always misleading. But I just think that again, the saxophones could have. You could probably get a little bit more implication of the chord into that one. Sometimes Thad Jones will do that. He'll have like the saxophones in a real like the fourth tenor and the baritone down in the lowest register of the horn. It gives so much meat to it. Like, let's see, it could have been like E, C. And that way you would only have maybe 2 E's as opposed to 3.
Yeah.
You'd also have a little bit of tension in the B and the C an octave apart. Experiment with, like, sometimes when you have notes that are like that, you can see like that, maybe it creates a different kind of tension.
Right.
But I just think it's a missed opportunity to have a lot of the implication of the chord in the saxophones and give it a lot of darkness to it. It could have been a little bit darker, but the trombones are perfect right in there, you know, just doing that kind of thing. The trumpets, you've got, of course, you got that last note. And you've got this rub right here, which is the only place where there's a half step. And it's like, almost like, well, they're both equally important, the C and the B, and it's just put them in there.
Yeah.
The
thing that I really struggled with this chord was that it's such a specific sound that I found that if I started adding other notes, like if I added a D, it totally sounds like an E7. Like if I added an F sharp, it doesn't really have the same kind of weight that it does just because you're adding another sound into the mix. And so that was something when I was writing these kinds of voicings, so that I was having a really hard time finding extra notes to add. In the newer version, I actually added a D sharp to make, just to lead into that section that starts on F major. So it ends up being like a C major 7, sharp 5, sharp 9 over E, and that wants to go to F major so bad. But all these places where it's like a tonic chord is really hard to, I was having a really hard time like adding notes and trying to make it more, to fill out the voicing.
Yeah. And the trumpets, they're all in a tight register. I mean, it's good. They're not high, so it's not going to give it a lot of sound until he goes up to or she goes up to this high F sharp. And then, I mean, I even thought like the idea of maybe introducing an F natural in there might have been cool. It just kind of be kind of subliminal, subtle, a little bit, one more little opportunity for something that rubs, that would be okay. But definitely not an F sharp. It'd have to be something like that. But great. It's such a great piece of music. And I know you were also working with the constraint of a short amount of time that the piece had to be for the competition. And you did a good job keeping it within that. I know it could have been longer. And I know that we're at that time where we should probably open this up for a Q&A. But before we do that, just did you have anything else you wanted to say about the piece, Leo, for everybody?
And I think if I were to rewrite this piece, this is something I was talking about with another teacher of mine. I would probably, when we talked about this in our lesson, but I think that that I really stuck to this format that I know in terms of this. There's this opening, there's a melody, and then there's a shout, there's a solo, and then the shout chorus, and then the head out, and a little outro, and that's it. I think if I were to rewrite this, I would probably chop the trumpet solo and maybe extend the tenor solo, but have the band be a little bit more involved in the development of the solo, because because I know my friend Aiden, he can go far, but also because it just that it brings the piece more together rather than having this section, and this section. So if I were to rewrite that, like even at the end, I could put a little like the ba 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 ba, like that could be a really cool thing if it started a little bit quieter, and then maybe a piano player starts playing, and then something else happens on top of that, and it could have developed into a lot more. So that's something I'm considering doing, is just I have this initial sketch, and then I can take it all different kinds of places with what I know now. So that's what I'm planning on doing in the future sometime.
Yeah, it's great. And again, congratulations. And I'm sorry that we couldn't play your piece this May with the band, but we'll do that. When we get back rehearsing and doing stuff, I'll make sure we pull it out and make a little recording, just something, of us playing it.
Be excellent. Be incredible.
Yeah. Send us your new, I know you have a slightly new version of it, so whatever. But yeah, great. So Adam or Antoinette or Mike, we're going to open this up for
yeah,
right?
I can kick things off for Q&A. So for those of you with questions to ask, we're going to ask you to use the raise hand feature in Zoom. So if you will go to Participants tab and then just click Raise Hand, it'll create a bit of a virtual queue for us, and then we'll get to as many questions as we can. And then I'll just ask that if you do have a question to ask, if you will make sure that your first and last name are listed properly so I can call on you when it's your turn to speak. With that, let's get to it. Our first question is coming from Andre Perlman. And Andre, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hello. I was going to ask, this is for both of you. When you're writing a piece, how do you go about creating an arc or making it feel like a full story?
That's a great question. And Leo, we talked about that. I'll just say something quick and I'll let you answer. I think that the arc, there's a natural arc to things. We talked about the Fibonacci series a little bit, and there's the natural relationship of the nautilus shell and bird's wings and all that, which is kind of like a 3/5. So there is sort of a natural place, 3/5, 3/4 of the way through something where a climax makes the most sense. Although there's no rules, there are no rules for this kind of thing. But storytelling, I just love that you brought that up. Storytelling is so important. Imagery, the idea of we're taking a journey, and how you can use all this technical knowledge and harmony, everything that you know and you have control over to tell a story. And I think what you just said is it. It's got to tell some kind of a story. Leo, what did you think? Did you think about that on this chart, or do you have any other?
Yeah, well, I knew the solo section, it's going to obviously have some kind of excitement in it. So if I want to generate excitement, generally have a few cups of coffee, and then I play the guitar a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling it now. So that's like the mental process. But the in terms of the writing, I generally try and think about where do I want to go and where have I been already. So I could say, like, in the solos, it's a lot of one person is playing and then there's an accompaniment part. But then, so to contrast that, in the shout chorus, I put, okay, well, there's like the trumpets that'll be playing, and then the saxophones will have something else kind of going on, and they're going to trade. So it's almost like you're hearing two kind of things happening at the same time. So I think contrast is really, really important in developing interest and just seeing where have you been, because if you're at the same place the whole piece, you're not really going anywhere with it. So that's
true. And with the idea of, you talk about the saxophones and the trumpets are back and forth, and there's like a conversation, and we talk about relationships, and we look at the drama of a piece of music, which it needs to have, is like looking at a movie, a successful movie that has, there's conflict, resolution. It's not just, if you turn on a movie or a TV show and it just was like, everything was great and just, that's it, and then it's over. There's no conflict, there's no resolve. So I think we have to figure out ways to create conflict and resolve in a sense when we write music too, so that it feels like it's carrying a story, right? Yeah.
Great. Thanks for your question, Andre.
Yeah, great.
All right, next up, we've got Joseph Allen. Joseph, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I was wondering, when I'm composing, I often get stuck on a melody that's in my head and I can't expand past expand past the melody. So I was wondering what tips you might have for creatively building out past an initial idea.
Well, sometimes when we're writing, we do get stuck. And Bob Brookmeyer, when I studied with him back in, he was running a thing called the BMI Jazz Composers Workshop, and I was able to be in that class for a couple of years. He says, when you get stuck, go to the keyboard or whatever and do what he called a white note exercise, which just meant these like a scale, like one octave of C scale, and try to write a whole page of melody. Whatever it is, it doesn't, you know, it's just, the idea is to see using intervals, using space and all that, if you can just come up with something, and it kind of forces you to deal with a restriction, and it gets you to be really creative and sort of break out of habit. Another thing is if you have some thematic material you're dealing with that you want to develop, you like it, you're singing it all the time, but what can I do with this? Analyze it for the say the intervals within it, and think of how you can expand that. Like if you had, as a short melody or a phrase, you could say, well, there's a half step, and there's a fifth or a sixth and a fifth. And if I expand that down now for a fifth down here and a half step here, now I could expand the melody by adding other intervals that came from the original part of the melody. And you can sort of fool around with it, and it sort of forces you into some areas that you may not have thought of. So there's always like weird techniques that you can look them up, classical composers use, or make up your own, where it kind of forces you to go in some areas. I transcribed a bunch of political speeches, and I made that the thematic material. So it's like I already had all the notes from the politicians' just all the pitches of the speech, and I transcribed, and I had notebooks of the stuff, and then I started to try to create phrases out of it, and then harmony that would support it and all that. And it gave me, I wrote stuff that I never would have written had I not given myself that challenge. So just try to be creative in terms of how you come up with your thematic material. Did you want to say something about that, Leo?
Well, you said what I was going to say about the intervals. My piece that we were looking at, the melody goes ba da da da, and then the answer to that is kind of ba da 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 da, and that's actually pretty much directly down a fifth. And then I realized that later in the piece, I realized that while I was writing it, and then I was like, well, I can actually just cycle this, because I kept on hearing it go on and on and on in my head. I was like, well, why is this working? So it kept on going, because it's like ba da 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 ba da 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 da. You can keep going with that. So that was what I was going to say, is just see, look at where, what you have with your melody in terms of the intervals, and what else can you do with it intervallically.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for your question, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's take one from Jackson Irvine. Jackson, go ahead.
Hey, hi, both of you. Great Zoom, by the way. I love listening to this and hearing both perspectives from Leo's compositional perspective, and also, of course, Ted Nash's amazing compositional abilities. I had a question about transcribing, specifically big band stuff. One thing that I kind of struggle with in transcribing is I like to have the exact voicings that, say, when I'm listening to Bob Brookmeyer big band record, or he's arranging something for the Mel Lewis Orchestra, right? And I like to have those exact voicings so I can replicate it in my own compositions, arrangements, right? But I'm having a hard time, just doing that overall, and like really trying to grasp, like, understanding the reason why he might use those specific voicings, or how they work in certain settings. So I was wondering if I could get input from both Leo and Mr. Nash about transcribing big band stuff, and what might be important to look for when you're doing that.
Well, one thing is to always listen to things, whether it's an arrangement or a solo, or even a way someone plays a melody. Why do you like it? Like, what attracts you to it? And try to identify what that quality is, and then analyze it for what is creating that quality. So if you like a particular voicing, what is it? if you like the way the counterpoint weaves in and out, why is it so effective? Why does it work so well for you? Is it because it's playing when the melody isn't? Is it the certain notes that it grabs to support the melody? Things like that. Just pay attention to the things that you like in the music, and then figure out what it is. Bob Brookmeyer loved, he loved the people that came before him. And you listen to Bill Finnegan, or you listen to Jerry Mulligan, or Thad Jones. There's that book by Rayburn Wright. Do you know that book?
No.
You have that, right, Leo? Or you?
Yeah, Inside the Score.
Inside the Score, where he takes Thad Jones, Bob Brookmeyer, and Sammy Nestico, three very different composers and arrangers, and he analyzes the scores and talks about that and shows you things. So then you can listen to the music and say, I do like this, I don't like it, or this is something that's really attractive to me, and then you can learn what that is. I think it's really important to transcribe also. Take something that's not too complex, but like say from the cool jazz period, like Walking Shoes by Jerry Mulligan. The very simple counterpoint implications that he uses in his big band writing is so powerful. They're so powerful and simple at the same time. So check that out. I remember I was listening to Herbie Hancock's intro to Ciora, the Lee Morgan song, and he's like, and I was like, why does that sound so rich? It's like, it sounds like it's got 20 notes in it, and it's 5 notes, but it's just the way you've got the 3rd and 7th here, and then you've got the upper extensions, the 13 on the top. Wow, okay, so now I know I can get that beautiful sound and that certain kind of tension and everything if I voice out a section like that, 5 voices, saxophones, whatever. So just pay attention to the things that you like, transcribe them, and they become part of you. What about you, Leo? What are you thinking about?
So for big band transcription is not something I've done that much. I transcribed a little bit of Duke Ellington's Reminiscing in Tempo, but that was like, I don't know, a month ago. But what I have looked at a lot of is like just looking at scores, and I've looked at like Thad Jones's All of Me, which Mr. Nash, I found out you're actually on my favorite recording of that track, the 20 years at the Village Vanguard.
Oh yeah.
So I looked at that one, and just looking at the voicings, and figuring out what is the how are they built is really what's informed my writing. For example, like if you look at like Duke's sax solo on Cottontail, why does it work the way it does? That's when I looked at, and look at the voicings on like That's Freedom, that Jones one. There's this one chord, it's like a B flat 13 with a major 7 in it, and it doesn't make any sense, but it rings so perfectly. It's like one trumpet is just playing an A. And so why just think about like, why does that work? And generally the answer that I've always come to is voice leading is really what determines why things work the way they do. But sometimes it can be rhythmic. But like Mr. Nash, you were saying about why do you like something? Like I realized I really like Bill Evans' solo on Days of Wine and Roses because of the left-hand rhythms he's playing. Like that's what that kind of is what creates the momentum. So I look at what do I like you were saying, and then I check it out. But it's big band transcription is hard, man.
It is. You have to hear a lot of voices. I don't do a lot of it either, so I know what you're talking about. Great question. Yeah.
Thanks, Jackson. All right, let's take one from Sammy Hansen. Sammy, can you hear us?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Hello, everyone. I really like your arrangement, by the way. That was really good.
Thank you.
So either of you can help me answer this. I have trouble going and creating good original melodies. So either they're like just bad and not interesting, or they sound too much like something else and they make me feel bad. But yeah, I'm sure either of you have felt the same about any of that. So is there any like steps you can take, or is it just going to your instrument and playing for hours until you find something you like.
Leo, why don't you answer that?
Yeah, so I totally can relate. Writing melodies is the hardest thing for me. I have so many kinds of chord progressions, or just have like one chord that I really like. I don't know how to use it. Writing generally, when I find that I come up with a melody, the rest of the piece comes very quickly, and it comes very naturally to me when I have the melody. So I can totally relate, and I would have 10 times as many songs if I had melodies for all of the, kinds of chords and rhythms and things that I like. But what I will say about creating melodies is a lot. I like to play the music of people whose melodies I like. So for example, like I talked about Monk. Monk's music is just so rich melodically and harmonically and rhythmically, but specifically the melody, because when I improvise with it, it's really hard to improvise on Monk's music without abandoning the melody. And so when I've played Monk's music, you kind of have to reinterpret the melody over and over and over again. And it kind of makes you think about what the things that you like within that melody are. So for example, like, it's a good one. Like Bright Mississippi, those stark major chords, or you kind of have to kind of shape that. And then eventually maybe you come up with something of your own that uses these like major chords that are really in your face, or Baya with it kind of has this weird harmony, and it's not really an E flat, it's not really an A flat. It's kind of weird, but you have to mess around with it and figure out what are the things that you like about it. So my advice for creating melodies would be I like Monk, so I play a lot of Monk, but find people whose melodies you really like and improvise on them. Start with it and then change it a little bit, and then eventually you're improvising just over the changes, but you still have that kind of melody in your head and it's always going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
That's so well said. And yeah, just a quick, where we come up with melodies, if we don't do something like where I talk about, I transcribed a speech or whatever, and that wasn't really my melody, but it comes from what we hear a lot of the times. If it's something that we develop on a keyboard or on an instrument, sometimes it's forced, or sometimes it comes out of a pattern that we're familiar with, and it's maybe not something that we're hearing. But if we can actually hear it, even if it sounds to you like maybe it's not the most sophisticated thing in the world, but you're hearing it, it's usually pretty strong. But I do like the idea of improvising on an instrument, transcribing. You can record yourself just improvising. It could be with changes, without changes, and get pieces that you really like. Because I think improvisation is where a lot of our greatest composition comes from.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is coming from Michael Gilbert.
Hello. Thank you again for this. This is just a great amount of information. I really appreciate this happening, and also congrats to Leo. Well deserved.
Thank you.
So I'm a big fan of kind of more creative music, more avant-garde music, I guess. Stuff like like in the realm of John Chikai and Sun Ra and all these people. And one thing that I noticed especially in kind of like that whole 60s and 70s era, is that there's a great use, especially when you think about people like Roscoe Mitchell or the Art Ensemble, great use of space and a great use of texture in a non-traditional sense, maybe from like extended techniques. And you can see this is used in some big bands, but generally they're kind of more non-traditional big bands like the orchestra or the Little Huey Creative Music Orchestra or something like that. So my question is, how do you feel do you feel that there is room in the creation of big band music for the use of things like space and texture in a more non-traditional sense?
Absolutely. When we fully compose from beginning to end, we tend to fill up all the spaces. I mean, it's just what happens, the way we get space by having a solo. So what we do is we allow the solo sections to be the place where there can be space and breath, whereas we should be thinking about that more in our composing and arranging as well. And then, Leo and I talked a little bit about how Bob Brookmeyer, when he composed later in his career, and at least later when I started to work with him, he was getting away from allowing people in the band to solo and improvise because he didn't want to hand over the responsibility of continuing the composition with somebody who's going to improvise, or he would give really specific instructions about what the improvisation should be. So when you think about that, improvisation is such an important part of what jazz is and what any kind of chart is. You always have a place where there's improvisation. Now, some bands, there was one called the Urban Primates in the 80s, which was a big band, and they would show up at the club and there was no music stands or anything. They would just start playing. There wasn't even a band leader. It was just a group of musicians, and they would just start. And then they would play a whole concert or 2 sets or whatever of improvised music as a big band. And it took incredible amount of maturity, patience, because there would be, you'd want to jump in. If everyone just starts playing, it just becomes cacophonous, right? So space is so extremely important, and smaller groups and smaller ensembles within a large ensemble, they develop this incredible patience and technique to just improvise, and it could be down to 1 person or 2 people for a period of time, or a bowed bass and a muted trumpet, or some percussion, or, you know what I mean? It's like there's so much still to explore in this area, and I don't think we hear enough of that. Everything is pretty much written through composed and overwritten and all that. So I love that you're exploring that, and we need you out here, man. We need that. We need what you're talking about. So please continue to work on that and bring that to what everybody's doing out here, because we don't have enough. I don't think we have enough of that. I think there's a lot of room for what you're talking about. Have you explored that music, Leo? Do you know what he's talking about?
Man, Michael, you're probably better equipped to answer this question than me, but Mr. Nash, I know we talked about Ornette Coleman's music. So recently that's been when I actually asked you a very similar question about creating space and room for more improvisations in big band music. So Ornette Coleman's music has recently been just in terms of everything that's going on in the world. I said like an undeniable force of good. It just feels very true. So I think if you're going to write something that's going to be a mix of, sections that are very composed or something that's free. Example, like maybe like the music of Chris Davis is what comes to mind. It's just make sure I would say just trying to make sure that it really fits within the section, and that there's not just free and then composed and then free, but kind of finding a way to merge those 2 kinds of ideas. That's something I really have not explored yet, but soon, hopefully,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what you said, Leo, about truth is important, that just honesty, because we can tell when someone's lying, right? When we talk to people, we can tell when someone is not genuine in what they're saying, and we can feel that when people are improvising too. Is this genuine? Is it what they feel, or is it a bunch of notes? And I think we can feel that with the composing and arranging as well. Was this honest? Is this truthful? Is this for real? And that's something that's hard to judge. It's hard to say what's real and what isn't real when it comes down to a C13 chord.
Yeah.
As opposed to if someone's not being genuine as a person to you. So I love the question, because there's a lot of honesty and truth in the space, and I think we all need to look more for that. For sure. Yeah, I can't hear your music, man.
All right, that gets us to our last question of the afternoon. It's coming from Annabella Brotherston. Go ahead.
Hi, I just want to say, Leo, it's good to finally hear your work after seeing you at Skeins and some of the other sessions. My question is kind of based off an earlier question about melody and how you come up with melodies. So I don't know, I guess the theorizing side of me was kind of wondering if you think that composition is related to the instrument you play, like whether you come up, or you're better at coming up with melodies first or harmonies, as you know, our instruments like the window and our identity in perceiving music?
Great question, Leo. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, so I play the guitar. So I'm kind of in the middle of you know, purely melody and purely harmony. Some like a lot of instruments will play a lot more melody or a lot more harmony, depending on what it is. My piece came about when I was watching like a TED talk, and I was playing the guitar. I was trying to match my phrasing exactly with this guy who's speaking. But in terms of the what comes first, is it melody or is it harmony? I think it really depends. Is it it depends on if you're trying to satisfy a set of chord changes that already exist. Maybe the blues, which is very founded in a very it's a very, like, I don't want to say traditional, but it's a very kind of deep set of chord changes that has a lot of variations on it. And then if you want to change those chord changes, maybe that comes before, or maybe your melody comes first and it happens to be a blues, and then you alter those chord changes. So when I write, it's really comes to be a mix of both. Like, I've written tunes that I started out, it's a blues, or I started out, it's a rhythm changes. Other times I've written a melody and then I have to try every single chord to figure out what is the second chord of this piece. So it sometimes it comes, the whole melody comes first, sometimes the entire harmony comes first, and sometimes it comes at the same time. But it usually, for me, it's usually at the same time, just because I play the guitar, I'm playing chord melody kind of style.
That's great. I love how you answered that, because I think that's it. There's melody, there's harmony, there's rhythm. We could start with either of those, or two at once, or whatever. I used to start a lot of things with the harmony, because I love harmony. I just love harmony and implications, the movement and the tension and release and the cadence and all of that. So my melodies tended to be kind of sad, because I was just trying to find something that would fit on top of the chords that I liked, you know. And then it would be kind of sad because the melody wasn't something you would end up wanting to sing. Or so then I said, all right, forget chords, right? I'm just going to try to focus on hearing some melodies, and then I'll find supportive harmony for it. And I found that the more I think about melody, sometimes the harmony, it can be so many different things, but the melody is what kind of gives it the through line and carries you forward. I know some people, Ben Ellison and Jeff Ballard, a bass player and drummer that I know, they used to get together and Ben would start with just a bass figure. He'd come up with something, a little thing, and then Jeff would find a groove, and then they would just play the groove for like an hour, and then he would change the bass a little bit, and that's how they would start a song. It was like an hour of just playing a groove and a bass line. So, and then Ben would later come up with like little fragments of melodies and a couple little supportive harmonies, and it wasn't always a very intense harmonic, chord structure or anything like that, but it was about the groove and about some little melody fragments, and that was what he liked. So everybody is different about that, and they're all valid ways: melody, harmony, chords, starting with anything. Try it all. Like, if you feel like you get stuck, like people talk about getting stuck with how they're approaching writing, try a completely different method, and it'll be fun. It'll be a fun exploration.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Thanks, Annabelle.
All right. So that's going to wrap things up for the Q&A. Thank you all for such wonderful questions, and I'm going to throw it to Antoinette to wrap things up.
All right, everyone. So can we just all give Leo another virtual round of applause? That was wonderful. Congratulations again, Leo. And thank you all for taking part in our Essentially Ellington Composition and Arranging Masterclass. Please be sure to join us tomorrow for our cheer tunnel to meet the 23 participating bands from across the globe. Also tomorrow is our Q&A with Wynton Marsalis and members of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, and our virtual jam session. Visit www.jazz.org/EE25 for a full schedule of events celebrating 25 years of Essentially Ellington. And with that, here's to 25 more.
Right. Hey, thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for Antoinette for hosting and all your help, everybody. So I'll see you at the next event.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Leo.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.